Hi, everyone. Today, I would like to read another chapter out of the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And I'm going to read chapter 15, The Path of Unconditional Happiness, because that's, at the end of the day, what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be happy, joyful, abundant, all the good stuff. That's what people do, what they do. That's why we get up in the morning. That's why we do the work that we do, because we just want to be happy. So, the path of unconditional happiness. The highest spiritual path is life itself. And that first sentence, that did it for me, because that's why I wanted to read it for you guys. Because a lot of people think that if they are spiritual, like an hour a day, that they have a spiritual practice, but life itself is the spiritual practice. If you know how to live daily life, it all becomes a liberating experience. But first, you have to approach life properly, or it can be very confusing. To begin with, you have to realize that you really have only one choice in this life. And it's not about your career, whom you want to marry, or whether you want to see God. People tend to burden themselves with so many choices. But in the end, you can throw it all away and just make one basic underlying decision. Do you want to be happy, or do you not want to be happy? It's really that simple. Once you make that choice, your path through life becomes totally clear. And I guess most of the people, specifically the ones that are seeing this video, we want to be happy. Most people don't dare give themselves that choice because they think it's not under their control. Someone may say, well, of course I want to be happy, but my wife left me. In other words, they want to be happy, but not if their wife leaves them. But that wasn't the question. The question was very simple. Do you want to be happy or not? If you keep it that simple, you will see that it really is under your control. It's just that you have a deep-seated set of preferences that gets in the way. I love it when he talks about preferences. Michael Singer also has an amazing podcast and videos on YouTube, and I would highly recommend to tune into that because every day he has like a talk and they post it and it's amazing. I love it. I start my day with it and I highly recommend it. Let's say you've been lost and without food for days and you finally find your way to a house. You can hardly make it to the doorstep, but you manage to pull yourself up and knock on the door. Somebody opens the door, looks at you and says, "Oh my God, you poor thing. Do you want something to eat? What would you like?" Now, the truth is, you really don't care what they give you. You don't even want to think about it. You just utter the word food. And because you really mean it when you say you need food, it no longer has anything to do with your mental preferences. The same goes for the question about happiness. The question is simple. Do you want to be happy? If the answer is really yes, then it's without... I was stuck here a little. If the answer is really yes, then say it without qualifying it. After all, what the question really means is, do you want to be happy from this point forward for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens? Sit with that for a second, because it is deep, though. It sounds all so easy, but it's a deep question. I'm going to read it again. Do you want to be happy from this point forward for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens? Now, if you say yes, it might happen that your wife leaves you, or your husband dies, God forbid, or the stock market crashes, or your car breaks down on an open highway at night. Those things might happen between now and the end of your life. But if you want to walk the highest spiritual path, then when you answer yes to that simple question, you must realize that you have to mean it. There are no ifs and ors or buts about it. It's not a question of whether your happiness is under your control. Of course, it's under your control. It's just that you don't really mean it when you say you're willing to stay happy. You want to qualify it. You want to qualify it. It's so good. He's so good. And he said it's so good, like unbelievable. You want to say that as long as that this doesn't happen, or as long as that doesn't happen, then you're willing to be happy. That's why it seems like it's out of your control. Any condition you create will limit your happiness. You simply aren't going to be able to control things and keep them the way you want them. So cool. You have to give an unconditional answer. If you decide that you are going to be happy from now on for the rest of your life, you will not only be happy, but you will become enlightened. Unconditional happiness is the highest technique there is. You don't have to learn Sanskrit or read any scriptures. You don't have to renounce the world. You just have to really mean it when you say that you choose to be happy. And you have to mean it regardless what happens. This is truly a spiritual path, and it is as direct and sure a path to awakening as it could possibly exist. Once you decide you want to be unconditionally happy, something inevitable will happen that challenges you. This test of your commitment is exactly what stimulates spiritual growth. In fact, it is the unconditional aspect of your commitment that makes this the highest path. It's so simple. It is simple, not easy. You just have to decide whether or not you will break your vow. When everything is going well, it's easy to be happy. But the moment something difficult happens, it's not so easy. You tend to find yourself saying, but I didn't know that this was going to happen. I didn't think I'd miss my flight. I didn't think Sally would show up at the party wearing the same dress that I had on. I didn't think that somebody would dent my brand new car after 1 hour I got it. Are you really willing to break your vows of happiness because these events took place? We all have those examples. We all have them, and they happen like this, and it feels like the end of the world. Billions of things could happen that you haven't even thought of yet. The question is not whether they will happen. They are going to happen. The real question is whether you want to be happy regardless of what happens. There we go again. The purpose of your life is to enjoy and learn from your experiences. You were not put on earth to suffer. Suffering is an option. You do know that, do you? It's like interesting. The day that I learned that suffering was an option, I have to admit that was a big one for me. And I was like, suffering is an option? Are you kidding me? I'm suffering. No, it's an option. I can choose not to. You were not put on earth to suffer. You're not helping anybody by being miserable. Regardless of your philosophical beliefs, the fact remains that you were born and you're going to die. And during the time in between, you get to choose whether or not you want to enjoy the experience. Events don't determine whether or not you're going to be happy. They're just events. You determine whether or not you're going to be happy. You can be happy just to be alive. You can be happy having all the things happening to you, and then be happy to die. If you can live this way, your heart will be so open and your spirit will be so free that you will soar up to the heavens. I relate to that. I know. I always tell people I live in La La Land, but it is so true. You can so choose to be happy in every single moment of the day. And I get all emotional about it because I never understood it until not that long ago. And so when you choose in every moment to be happy, I'm not saying that I am and that I can do it all the time, but I do know that when I do it, that it works. This path leads you to absolute transcendence because any part of your being that would add a condition to your commitment to happiness has got to go. If you want to be happy, you have to let go of the part of you that wants to create melodrama. This is the part that thinks there is a reason not to be happy. You have to transcend the personal. And as you do, you will naturally awaken to a higher aspect of your being. And I want to really, again, invite you to read the book and to go to this chapter and read these words over and over and over again, because we learn by repetition. And by reading it over and over and over again, you're going to start to feel a difference inside of you. You're going to start to embody it. You have to take it out from the mental, understanding it. This book is read by many, many college students, because if you take a psychology class, they often refer to Michael Singer's book and you read it. But students they tend to read it just to understand it intellectually. This book, you don't read intellectually. This book, you're going to read to embody it. So I really encourage you to just buy the book and use it as a life manual and just read it over and over and over again. And the repetition is going to make it sink in your mind. And you are going to see that you're going to become more happy every time you read it, because you let go of a lot of junk. Now, of course, I forgot where I was. This path, I read it already, I'm going to read it again. This path leads you to absolute transcendence, because any part of your being that would add a condition to your commitments to happiness has to go. If you want to be happy, you have to let go of that part of you that wants to create melodrama. This is the part that thinks there is a reason not to be happy. You have to transcend the personal, and as you do, you will naturally awaken to the higher aspects of your being. You will naturally awaken to the higher aspects of your being. And once you awaken to those aspects, life becomes very blissful. In the end, enjoying life's experiences is the only rational thing to do. You're sitting on a planet spinning around in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Think about that. Go ahead, take a look at reality. You're floating in empty space in a universe that goes on forever. If you have to be here, at least be happy and enjoy the experience. You're going to die anyway. Things are going to happen anyway. Why shouldn't you be happy? You gain nothing by being bothered by life's events. It doesn't change the world. You just suffer. There's always going to be something that can bother you if you let it. This choice to enjoy life will lead you through your spiritual journey. In truth, it is itself a spiritual teacher. Committing yourself to unconditional happiness will teach you every single thing there is to learn about yourself, about others, and about the nature of life. And it is so true. I can vouch for that. You will learn all about your mind, your heart, and your will. But you have to mean it when you say that you'll be happy for the rest of your life. Every time a part of you begins to get unhappy, let it go. Work with it. Use affirmations or do whatever you need to do to stay open. If you're committed, nothing can stop you. No matter what happens, you can choose to enjoy the experience. If they starve you, put you in a solitary confinement, you just have fun like being like Gandhi. No matter what happens, just enjoy the life that comes to you. Is that easy? Not at all. Does it make sense? For a lot of people, probably not. But when you're listening to me, you're probably ready to hear this, because it is hard to hear. As difficult as that sounds, he knows that it is difficult to hear. What's the benefit of not doing it? If you're totally innocent and they lock you up, you might as well have fun. What good does it do you to not have fun? It doesn't change anything. In the end, if you stay happy, you win. Make that your game and just stay happy no matter what. And if you read Michael Singer's second book, then The Surrender Experiment, you will know that even for Michael Singer, it wasn't always that easy. He really is the living, walking around example of how to do this. And I really would recommend you reading the story of his life, because it's going to open your eyes. And it, again, it's going to help you to see things in a total different perspective. The key to staying happy is really very simple. Begin by understanding your energies. If you look inside, you will see that when you're happy, your heart feels open and the energy rushes up inside of you. When you aren't happy, your heart feels closed and no energy comes up inside. So to stay happy, you just don't close your heart. No matter what happens, even if your wife leaves you or your husband dies, God forbid, you don't close. It is a practice. In the beginning, when I started doing that, it's an intellectual practice, or for me it was. I'm just sharing you my experience now. Maybe other people would disagree with me, but in the beginning, it was a conscious decision. And when I felt the unhappiness coming up, I decided not to give that energy and to be happy anyway. And that was very artificial in the beginning, because my whole body screamed, no, you're pathetic. You want to be happy right now. And I was fighting my own demons, but once you practice it over and over again, it becomes so much easier, and then your life becomes so much better. There is no rule to say you have to close. Just tell yourself that no matter what happens, you're not going to close. You really do have that choice. I think that is what they mean with free will. You have the free will to close or to stay open, and that's the only choice you have. When you start to close, just question if you're really willing to give up your happiness. You should examine what it is inside of you that believes there is some benefit to closing. The slightest thing happens to you and you give away your happiness. You were having a great day until someone cut you off on your way to work. It got you really upset and you stayed that way the rest of the day. Why? Dare to ask yourself that question. What good came from letting it ruin your day? There was no benefit. If someone cuts you off, let go and stay open. If you really want to, you can. If you take on this path of unconditional happiness, you will go through all the various stages of yoga. You will have to stay conscious, centered, and committed at all times. I think that's true. You will have to stay one-pointed on your commitment to remain open and receptive to life. But nobody said that you can't do this. Staying open is what the great saints and masters taught. They taught that God is joy, God is ecstasy, God is love. If you remain open enough, waves of uplifting energy will fill your hearts. Spiritual practices are not an end in themselves. They bear fruit when you become deep enough to remain open. If you learn to stay open at all times, great things will happen to you. You simply have to learn not to close. And then he goes on and he explains more on how to do it, but I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to show the book again. And I really recommend go and get it, read it over and over again, because your life is one spiritual adventure. And you can make a decision to be happy in every single second of the day. Have a wonderful day, you guys, and I see you in my next book reading.